And finally, the very first episode of Conversation Capital, where we'll be discussing anything and everything that plagues our lives and society today. So recently in South Africa, there was a constitutional ruling that really affects cohabitation couples, locally known as FUT and SIT. And so we don't know all the details. So I've brought in a friend and lawyer,
Go ahead, Ursula.
Thank you. Mamelo Tulahari, and she is coming through as an attorney, a notary, and conveyance attorney. Is that the correct way to say it? Girl, your title is long.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, though. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So what does it mean? What is the constitutional ruling? What does it say? What are the repercussions for these? Repercussions sounds like such a bad term. What does it mean for FUT and SIT?
Repercussions
is a good term. Oh, is it?
Yeah. Consequences, really, So I think I want to start off with what cohabitation is, and I think most people will know your ordinary FUT and SIT.
Yes.
But basically, it's two people that are in a romantic, intimate relationship who then decide to come together and have a common home or abode. And I mean, the consequences or you would basically be sharing household necessities, emotional support, perhaps, financial support to one another. And you could kind of say that is akin to a marriage, right? Just without the legal title of a marriage. And there's been so many cases, and this doesn't only stem from now. So previously, and I think everyone will know about this, previously same-sex couples couldn't get married.
Yes.
Right. You couldn't get married. There was just a whole lot of stuff going on. Even now, there's just a whole lot of homophobes in the world, in our society.
Yes.
Corrective rape, all of that. It still happens to this day and age. But back in the day, you couldn't, as a same-sex couple, get married. And what same-sex couples then opted for was cohabitation.
Yes.
Up until a point in time where the law then recognized same-sex couples as spouses to one another. And that is when we saw the promulgation and the enactment of the Civil Union Act.
Yes.
Right. So it's been there. It's always been there. And the norm would be, if you were cohabitating previously, you would have a cohabitation agreement, right? People didn't even know this. You could have a document that you sign. Yeah, you could. A legal document that you sign, I mean, it can be like a normal agreement. Both parties' names, ID numbers, you put it in there. You say, I so-and-so in a relationship with so-and-so. This is our cohabitation agreement. We're going to be staying at this place, and these are going to be our responsibilities. And we do not intend for it to be, or for our relationship to be akin to a marriage or to have the legal consequences of a marriage, right? And the thing also is people always considered cohabitation as a common law marriage. And this is something that is widespread, especially across the Black South African community, right? It's considered that we've been dating for long, we stay together, we FUT and SIT, and therefore we are legally married because perhaps you can't afford to actually get married or whatever the case may be. So cohabitation was also then considered common law marriage. But there is no such thing as a common law marriage in South Africa.
Yes.
It's either you're married or you're not.
Oh, but isn't there customary and civil?
So that's very much different.
Yes.
To be customarily married, which is now actually recognized in terms of the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act. This came about in 1998, 2000s.
Yes.
Right, it's a new act. And it's so interesting because as African people, right, obviously this won't apply to your white civil society or people who get married in terms of Islamic or Muslim rights.
Yes.
So customary marriages are a thing that we've been doing since the beginning of time as African people. And what this law then did, or this act, it said it recognizes indigenous people, right? I don't know why they call us indigenous because it's not like we don't originate from here. Yes. So we are people from here, and it recognizes our customs and laws, and it says if you do 1, 2, 3 practices,
yes,
you are considered to be married.
Okay.
And it also regulates polygamous marriages.
Yes, yes.
So if you want to enter into a polygamous marriage, you cannot be, or you cannot go and get married under the Matrimonial Property Act or the Marriage Act. You have to get married under the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act, and then you have to actually have a contract that regulates how your estate, right, will be dissolved upon divorce amongst all of your families and your wives. So in terms of the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act, to be married in terms of that law, or to be considered customarily married, even if you don't go to Home Affairs and register it, there are certain factors and requirements that have to be met. The first would basically to celebrate your union in a certain way. So the two families must come together, it must be celebrated. There must be a negotiation, right? And that would be your lobola, mahadi celebrations, that sort of thing. You must be over the age of 18 years. You cannot be younger than that. So in terms of the Marriage Act, you can be younger than 18 if you want to get married.
Yes.
Your parents just have to consent. Both parents. Both
this is customary marriage.
No. This is a civil marriage.
Oh, okay.
Yes. If you want to be customarily married, you have to be over 18.
Oh, okay.
And you must both agree to it.
Oh.
Right? So you cannot, a man can't come and say, okay, I'm marrying you, like you're 16, I want to take this child. Like those days are gone.
Yes,
I know we watch a whole lot of Mojala, Sengan Lingan or whatever. And the difference there is that it was 2 kids who then decided to get married. Right. But ideally you have to be over the age of 18 and you must both consent to enter into this
customary marriage. Unlike civil.
Yes, unlike
so there's
civil.
so many laws around, like this is a lot of law jargon, and I'm getting that there are actually so many variations and so many laws. But regarding the most recent passing of this cohabitation, what does it mean? Now when I'm fat and setting, I'm automatically married in community of property after 3 years. Like layman terms, what does it mean?
So it basically means that your marriage is your cohabitation.
Okay. Yes. Let's get the wording.
Will be almost regarded as a marriage, and it's now been said that it is unconstitutional to not give the same legal consequences and rights that are afforded to a marriage, and to not give that to a cohabitation or a life partnership.
What does that mean? What are the rights that are involved in somebody who's married? What are the rights?
Let me take you through this recent judgment, which has now basically, changed the landscape for most South African couples. And I want to just give you a brief facts of the actual case. So this is a case that's been happening since 2016, and it's Bonga versus the Master of the High Court. Those who want to go take a look at it can go check the Constitutional Court website, right? This lady was a domestic worker. She met this guy while she was working wherever, or at a taxi rank or whatever. He helped her with her groceries, and then they fell in love in 2014, and then they moved in together, I think, later that year. And he used to financially support her, right? So he was financially supporting her. He intended on them getting married, later on in the few years. They came out to society as a couple, right? Everybody described their relationship as akin to a marriage. And he definitely had the intentions of getting married to her. So she was a Zimbabwean national. And at some point, they then went to go take out lobola or mahadi, right, in Zimbabwe. And then upon their return, a few months later, he then passed on.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
He had properties. He had, I think, 2 properties in Cape Town.
A B&B or hotel.
Yes, he was quite well off. And he used to take care of everything for her. She didn't really need to worry. I don't know if she continued working as a domestic worker or not. And now the thing is, he's passed on. We're not married. Yes, you've taken our dowry, But that's in terms of Zimbabwean law, not in terms of South African law.
Yes.
So, I mean, are we married? Are we not married? Can I claim spousal maintenance or not? So she then, the executor of this, or her
Estate, yeah.
fiance's estate, was like, no, you can't claim because
Goodness.
terms of the law, in terms of the definition of spouse, which is a definition that is used in almost any and every other act, the Divorce Act, the Matrimonial Property Act, the Marriage Act, the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act, the Civil Union Act, you know, in terms of that definition, you are not considered to be the legal or the legal beneficiary of his estate, and therefore you cannot inherit his estate. So that's how this case came about, right?
Yes.
So she kept on challenging it, and she was like, no, but this is unconstitutional. There was a settlement agreement in place for 3 million or something of the sort, but she was still like, but we had this relationship that was akin to a marriage. We emotionally supported each other. We lived together. We shared household necessities, right? We helped each other grow. I provided him with love and comfort and emotional support for his career and his life. And so did he, and he provided me with financial support. And we came together and we built a life together. Why is it that I cannot now inherit and claim his estate? So that was the issue. And I guess most people will be like, yes, she deserves it. You know, I mean, we've already built a life together. Why not? We were married. Or we were cohabitating when we were about to get married. But you actually weren't legally married. And you don't fall under the definition of spouse.
Yes.
So now the court has come to say, actually, it was unconstitutional to discriminate against her based on her marital status.
Yes.
Just because she's not married, does not mean that she shouldn't inherit or claim from his estate, right? And because they had the intentions of getting married.
But how do you prove? Oh, okay, please continue.
Yeah. So because they had the intentions of getting married, and they were already in the process, therefore you should inherit. And the other thing is that the landscape of relationships and the nuclear family being a family from a marriage, right? Where it's mom, dad, or mom, dad, with their children, however they may have adopted or whatever the case may be, a nuclear family no longer really applies in the South African context because there are so many different definitions of family in South Africa. And South Africa has the highest, which is actually hilarious. It has the highest extramarital childbearing stats. And I think in the ruling itself, there are currently 3.2 million couples on record that cohabitate. You know when insurance calls you and then they're like, are you single, married, living together?
Yes.
And then you go and you're like, living together. They add you onto the stats.
Yes.
So 3.2 million people in South Africa are currently cohabitating, right? And they're not married. And therefore, there's no legal consequences when you are cohabitating as opposed to when you are married, right? But that has now changed. So
how is this regulated? How do we get to a place where they're like, okay, you guys have been together for X amount of years and now you're under this, you fall under this group that's, you know, being protected? Are you being protected in
terms of this ruling you are being protected. So the ruling's been suspended for 18 months. So usually what happens is when there's like a new precedent set, right, by a court, they will suspend it for 18 months and give Parliament a chance to basically go and rectify the acts, right? And then they must go and change the laws and change the definitions and change A, B, and C to make sure that it now applies to everyone and it's actually now the law in terms of an act, and you can go look it up and say, okay, this is the law in terms of clause this of this act, this applies. So let's just go back to the case and this lady, right? So she now has contested it and obviously now she can inherit his estate. And the qualification, and the court keeps mentioning this a lot, right? The qualification that they keep mentioning is that you must have been in a permanent life partnership, right? Whereby you needed to have, well, I won't say the same goal, but I want to put it in layman's terms and say the same goal. But there must have been a reciprocal duty of support.
Okay.
That is the qualification that they keep using.
Okay.
Or there must have been some sort of duty of support, either from one party to the other, or from one party to each other, however
so
it
even
must
but
be.
girlfriend allowance must there being so
it's kind of like there's a fine line. It's an extremely fine line, which is why this topic is so interesting.
Yes.
Because my first question was, what then, because this case is in terms of somebody that then dies.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's upon dissolution of death. Upon, it's being dissolved by death.
Yes.
What happens upon just ordinary termination?
Just a breakup, yeah.
Yes.
Do we now, does the Divorce Act now apply to people who are cohabitating?
Sure.
Do you see what I'm saying?
And my thing is, people that are cohabitating are being protected. But let's just say now I'm somebody's girlfriend and he takes care of me and he's been taking care of me for the past 4 years. But we don't necessarily live together. Maybe he lives with his wife or first wife and I'm hoping to be second. I don't know.
But Mamelo, isn't it, if you show proof that someone has been supporting you can claim.
Oh, so it's not just fat and sit.
Yes.
It's not.
I think this is important. We need to. It's not just. You just need to show that this person has been supporting me, and now this support is
applies
being.
to this current ruling.
Yeah.
But overall, people have been maintenance has always existed. If you can show, okay, this person has given me this much money for this long, you actually can claim an estate.
So husbands was betcha their girlfriend's cash.
That's why you find sometimes they'll give you cash instead of leaving paper trails. Yeah. But that's also because I can go back to my child's school and show her the child that they have with me has been paid for by this guy that passed away. And then in those instances, that's where you find the estate is frozen. They need to sort out things. So it's always been there. This is just particular.
There's so many layers to this thing.
Exactly. Right.
And, okay, let's just say now I enter into this cohabitation relationship and I want to protect myself. I'm the barling one and I want to make sure that at any point, should we separate, like a prenup.
Yes, so you can definitely do
now
that
you can sign a contract.
Now
that
you
says,
can do that. The only difference is now the contract needs to be registered with the deeds office. So in the same way that, well,
prenup, you guys are married, most guys, this is marriage.
Right? But also now, it's complicated. So, you now want to make sure that you are secure. You want a cohabitation agreement in place. It's going to be similar to an antenuptial contract, what people call a prenup, right? And you have to state that we are entering into this relationship. However, it's going to be, out of community of property. No legal assets or no assets will be shared. What's mine is mine. What's yours is yours. Nothing will apply even when it comes to growth. You may not claim maintenance. You must regulate all of that in terms of that contract, right? Previously, you could still do that, but it's just that you wouldn't register it with the deeds office. Now, because it's becoming a law, you can register it with the deeds office and somebody can actually see it on your name on the government system. That this person
is actually in
a cohabitation relationship or life partnership with someone, and these are the terms.
Then what becomes the difference between this and marriage?
And marriage.
What's the difference then?
So, and this is
I'm going to the deeds office. To me, it sounds like the only difference is that families aren't involved and maybe churches or whatever weird.
Well, I guess families might be involved at some point in time when it comes to the estate or to sharing of assets or to dissolution. You'll never really know. But that is a very important question. How then do you differentiate between a marriage and a fat and sit? Because, and the interesting thing is, I know the judgment kept saying it does not devalue the institution of marriage, but it takes into account the landscape and current socio-economic stance within South Africa. The fact that most South Africans aren't married, that there may be a high divorce rate, and that it has the highest amongst most countries, right, has the highest extramarital childbearing stats, which is the truth. We all know this, right? And they are just trying to accommodate the times in which we live. But at the same time, it might be negating, you know, the true essence of marriage and the true essence of cohabitation, right? And I guess then we enter into a debate about why do people cohabitate?
Why do people get married?
Why do people get married?
There's
so many other like nuances that we actually don't even know, or that we would have to talk about. But now, basically, the same legal consequences that apply to a marriage, or let's say to a certain extent, because the judgment keeps saying this only applies to a life partnership that is dissolved by death. You know, but what's to stop people from pushing it to saying, and this has definitely opened the floodgates. What's to stop them from saying, upon termination, we break up now, we've been staying together for a year, I want to claim half your house. Because we were fat and sitting, and we don't have an agreement.
Because you said, move out of your apartment, I'll take care of you, move in with me. I mean, these are things men say.
Something's haunting me. You mentioned the fact that there's a duty or support to each other, right? And I'm just wondering, is there a specific to say, is this support? Because I'm thinking of the role of women in the household a lot of the times where I'm not going to, maybe some women are not going to be supporting financially, right? So they don't bring in the numbers, but my duties in the home are a form of support. Yes. So I'm just wondering, even on you, from the top of your head, do you think there's room to say, you won't see my support in terms of numbers and so forth, but I make sure that the house is clean. I make sure the kids, if there's kids involved, are taken care of. I make sure that we live in a habitable space.
Yes. So this does definitely constitute a duty of support.
Okay.
And the court even makes mention of that. That, like with this actual case, that is what was happening.
Yes.
She didn't really give, she was a domestic worker. Right?
She wasn't bringing
not that
the
domestic
bacon.
workers can't like support, but I'm just saying. She was a domestic worker. She doesn't make as much money as a guy who has 2 properties in Cape Town, one in Sea Point, an Airbnb, and then something else. Right? So she didn't really need to bring in anything or any money. She just needed to be her kind, loving self, providing him with emotional support, etc. That was the reciprocal duty of support in terms of their relationship, right? Even if, let's say, they hadn't then gone through the process of almost getting married, I think this ruling would still be the same because their relationship was akin to that of a marriage. And, there have been cases previously that have, so this is not the first time this case is being brought to light, right? There have been cases of other people, same-sex couples, opposite-sex couples that have come to the courts and said, no, I want to inherit from my partner's estate or whatever the case may be. And in the one case, I remember the court basically said that it is not unfair to discriminate against cohabitating or cohabitating couples or cohabitation relationship or life partnership because you choose, right? Whether you want to cohabitate or whether you want to get married.
Yes.
Right? And they basically said you have that choice. And so therefore you have the choice of whether you want certain legal consequences to apply to you or not. Yes. And that is why most couples will choose to cohabitate because maybe we don't want the legal consequences as of yet, right? Perhaps maybe later, or we actually don't want them
at all.
And in that case, they basically said the difference was, or the difference, I'm saying the difference was because now it's the same. The difference was that in a life partnership, you could choose to leave at any moment, free of any, like no strings attached, right?
Yes.
Free of any encumbrances. You could choose to walk freely out of the relationship without any consequences and proceed to go live your life and start afresh. Whereas in a marriage, the legal consequence remains with you in that relationship. So that was the major difference as well. And in this case, so they took all those cases and they looked at them as well. Yes. And they were like, which is interesting. it's partly true and partly not true, right? That they dissected the concept of choice, whether you choose to get married or not. And I'm going to now speak about patriarchy. Excuse me. Right?
Go for it. Yeah, go in.
And they went into dissecting the choice of getting married and the choice of deciding to not get married and rather cohabitate. And I know that it was Justice Madlanga, right, that basically said this decision of choice does not take into account the reality of South Africa. Because most women, right, do not choose to cohabitate. They may be doing this based on their socioeconomic circumstance. And so this is why this judgment came into place, to provide protection to those sort of people. And they might not be getting married because the man chooses not to get married or chooses not to marry them and doesn't want to get married to them. And therefore they don't have a choice but to stay in a cohabitation or a life partnership whereby they're cohabitating, right? So the notion of choice is not necessarily the South African reality, he said. And for those who do choose then to cohabitate, I mean, what does that then do for them? Because that then is a negative impact on them. It has a negative impact on
those
them.
that don't want to enter into anything.
Into a legal consequence.
A legal consequence, yeah.
Because it's not protecting them because they may not be vulnerable. Like you said, I'm now the balling one.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to give you half my estate if I die or if
But that's the part
terminates.
where then you could just formalize it and just have a contract that would protect you. But like you're saying, some people don't want the burden of that. But overall, in the grander scheme, we do need to wrap up. In the grander scheme, how do you think this will affect societies and how societies see couples that are cohabitate? It's now difficult. Now we use the word interchangeably because it's got this, legal burden now, and what do you think? How do you think it will, how do you think it impacts society and how people view auntie, no uncle that have always been a Jwalaring couple, but now have some kind of legal consequence to them? Does it legitimize them in society? Does it now become some kind of stamp of approval when you say, oh, we've been living together for 3 years, we already go, then you guys are married.
Married.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think already when you see a cohabitating couple, you're thinking to yourself, okay, you guys are like almost basically like married. You just haven't formalized it. But that isn't always the case. Right? You might be staying together because, you spend so much time together. It just doesn't make sense for you to spend time here and for me to... And then, that might just be the case. So why not just move in together, But it's definitely going to change society's perspective.
Yeah.
But it might take a while, to be accepted by society. Because marriage is still a very valid and recognized institution in all parts of the world, right? And the truth is, it's always afforded you some sort of, even socially, some sort of status.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely. That is the thing. So it might take time for it to change and evolve over the years. But now when you see a cohabitating couple and they're out in society as we are together, we're cohabitating, whatever the case may be, you're basically going to know that the legal consequences of if this one dies, this one gets the estate. They basically are regarded as...
And even the family might treat the woman differently. So
I was about to say, on a lighter note, now they can't, unfortunately, because of how women are treated sometimes, they can't abuse you because you have entitlement to his benefits and whatever. Yeah. So I think it may, unfortunately, influence how families now view the cohabitating partner, most likely the woman, how they treat her. Because the women are usually isolated, especially if you were just a partner. Sometimes you attend the person's funeral as just a visitor. They don't recognize the fact that I was actually in a very serious relationship with this person. And now I feel like it adds a level of legitimacy.
It definitely does.
Thank you so much, Mamela, for joining us. The voice behind the mic, Bonga. Thank you so much. We do need to wrap it up, though. That being said, what do they say? Like, subscribe,
comment,
Comment,
share.
share.